Welcome to this edition of Workplace Culture Wisdom, a conversation series with experienced leaders. Welcome to our Wisdom Leaders series on workplace culture. I'm here with Lorin Brass, who's retired as a senior advisor for strategy and business development at Shell Oil. Welcome, Lorin. Nice to see you.
It's good to see you, Jerry.
Thanks. Lorin, you had a whole career at Shell Oil and you experienced culture changes and throughout that time at the company. And he also worked internationally in a variety of different cultures. And I wonder if you could just speak a little bit about, the importance of what a company culture means for its employees and for its customers also.
Well, sure. I guess when thinking about that question, I kind of walked myself back through that career, and in the early days, you kind of, as a young engineer, come into a company, and I think to myself, I never thought of the question of what is the culture here. The most important thing you wanted to do is not screw up in the early days, and so you kind of tended to watch to see what the behaviors were and what the processes were, and how people got um, you know moved through the company, etc., and began to um, you know move into that culture. It was a welcoming culture to me. It was fine culture, and I don't remember having to make a lot of adjustments. But over time, you don't even know that you're in that environment. It's like in the ocean and you're the fish and you're swimming along with the rest of the fish, and you don't know if the temperature is hot or cold, or if there's 100 fish or two fish, but you're in that groove. Um, but over a period of time, Shell went through some good times and bad times, and one of the times we were struggling a bit more from a financial performance point of view. The company decided to take a look at maybe what are some of the reasons for a lack of efficiency, lack of performance. All the theme of process improvement and work improvement was very much in vogue at that time. And we had a gentleman come in or two from a consulting point of view, actually Joe Jaworski, and I think at the time his partner was Adam Kahane. And they kind of did a lot of focus group work and individual interviews and did a lot of talking to people. And they boiled down, what the norms were, or perhaps what the culture was at that time, and without remembering or being stating what they all came up with, there was four or five key notes that kind of denoted what to them kind of shaped the culture of the company. And I just remember one, it's always stuck in my mind, and the quote was, the norm was, it's not okay not to know. So it's not okay not to know. And when you thought about it, when I thought about it, I said that's so very true, because in the early days of my career and others, it was just very much the norm that when you went in to make a proposal to your supervisors or leadership teams or whatever, you did the ultimate research, because you never wanted to be asked a question that you couldn't answer. It was viewed as a career shortening, if not career ending event, if you did not know the answer to a question. And so you would do ungodly amount of work to just think of any possible question that you could possibly be asked. And their point was, we're wasting a lot of key people's time doing work that is not necessarily fruitful. But you would not want to say, I don't know the answer to that question. And they made it a huge point that to managers to try to practice, which was hard for them to do, to accept the answer that says, well, I don't know, but I'll find out. I'll get back to you in a day or this afternoon, or I'll send you an email, whatever. That whole process took practice, both from both sides of the from the leaders and the people that were making presentations. But it's just an example of how you flow into a culture and don't even recognize sometimes what it's all about until someone from the outside or some other voice, looks at you and say, well, why are you doing it this way? And I think that's so incredibly important for kind of that extra view view what are the norms, what are the culture that really have to shake you up once in a while as they realize, come on, you've got to change. This is not the way to go.
I find the example you just gave really quite interesting because one of the things that we know from behavioral science is that when people are lacking information, they'll fill in that gap with what's familiar to them. And so no news or not knowing is not necessarily a good thing because people fill in information, but it's really a difficult change in culture like you're describing to get leadership to say, um, you know, we don't have any news right now, and when we do, we will share it with you. We'll tell you, or I'll get back to you with the information or the answer. That's because we're expected in leadership to have answers all of the
Right.
time.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, and there's a balance. There always is. You can't accept the fact that someone hasn't done their research and done the work that they should have done to make a proposal or do certain actions. But it would had gone the pendulum the pendulum had gone too far in one direction. So,
Along these lines, you work, at a higher executive level than many people do in a large company like that. What what was your experience for the senior leadership in a company for setting the tone for behavior and culture within the company?
oh, that's incredibly important. Um, and it kind of brings to mind the whole area of the kind of environment you want to create as a company. And one of the things that became obvious to me over time is that you want that environment to never stifle bad news. You wanted to make it safe for people to bring forward, very unfortunate incidents, uh, whatever's gone wrong in many ways. And we can see that playing out wrongly in so many news articles we read today or hear on the news. And you think, how in the world could senior management not have known that? Well, I come to the conclusion that you had a culture where people were too afraid to tell the bad news up the line. And I remember again, I was working overseas and brought into a leadership meeting because at that time I was responsible for putting together the budget and operating plan for our portion of the company, exploration and production. And we had one of our country managers coming in to give a presentation, and he did. He came from a country in the Far East. I think it was Brunei, actually, a country that Shell had had relationship with for a very long time. So the oil field, et cetera, were very, very old, had been in service for a long time. And this individual came in and described the situation at that time of the deterioration of the facilities. The tanks were rusting through, the separators were leaking, the valves, the fittings, the piping. I mean, it was a horrible story. I kept thinking, you are dead. You why haven't you done something about this? Because there was no plan for recovery either. It was just here's a data dump of everything that's gone wrong. And I was sitting there waiting for the shoe to drop and and the discussion to be going in the wrong direction very quickly. But that didn't happen. And the other senior leaders, in fact, the head of the part of the company, took it all in and empathized with him, and then they began to talk about, well, where do we go from here? And obviously, I had been in other settings where that was not the way the conversation went, and and turned out to be a much different situation. But I mean, it led to a much better. And the other thing I should add, though, is that this particular country chairman had a long history of great credibility with the company. So he came in with, a amount of built-in trust and a built-in confidence that perhaps someone else might not have done. So that is another key part of the equation. But still, I believed that there was going to be a lot more retribution. than what there was. But it's not just one instance like that where you don't shoot the messenger. You have to have that consistently and appropriately. I mean, if things have gone wrong for reasons that the person should be criticized or dealt with, and that's absolutely the right thing to do as well. But it gave me an example of, it's okay to bring forth bad news. And I think that's one of the toughest things for especially young people to get their minds around, is to tell the boss that they screwed up. And their first reaction is, let me go fix it quick a minute. And then I'll tell them about it, how I had the problem, but I fixed it. Well, that's almost always the wrong choice. You tell them a problem, you still need to fix it or figure out what to do, but you don't wait, because things can just as easily go worse than they can go better. Uh, so I don't know all the answers as to how to make that environment safe, but I think you have to have very, very consistent behaviors in those settings, and very, very reliable and trustworthy answers and relationships with those people over and over and over, not just once, but many times, to say it's okay to bring forward this bad news.
It raises a really important point about sort of emotional, psychological safety in an organization, both so that if something goes wrong or there's some negative news, the ability to speak up without fear. But the flip side of that is when it also might impact bringing forth new ideas or noticing something in the company where if they did it slightly differently, it could be more efficient. Because you, as you said earlier, you have new eyes on something, particularly if you're a younger, newer employee. So this ability to speak up strikes me as really quite important.
Well, it goes hand in glove with the whole idea of how do you get the most out of every person in the organization, and how do you not just have conversations dominated by those who talk the most, or those that think they have the only good ideas. How do you make sure that everybody has the chance to live and work to their full potential and be heard? And I think that again takes practice, it takes time, it takes repeatability, consistency. So in meetings, you have to make a very conscious effort to think about, who have I not heard from? And who do I want to call upon to say, well, I haven't heard from you yet. Do you have any ideas you'd like to share? And encourage that over and over again, so people understand that you will want input from everyone when you walk in that room. And it's not just, a one-time deal again. It wasn't common at all in our company, but in my portion of it there for a while, we did what I know you and Kathy and others have done a lot of, and that's circle practice. Start our meetings in circle and allow everyone to answer a question or have their turn to speak, in the same way when we close meetings. And that encouraged it and made it a norm that you want to hear from every person, and you value their input. And that again is the culture you want to create, is uh, making everyone feel that they have the ability to use their entire skill base, their entire set of talents at the workplace. I know there's one book that I read about, don't remember the author, but it talked about how so many people, when they walk that threshold into the building where they work, assuming they go to work at a building, but and they check out on several of the things that are in their talent pool, simply because they don't think they're wanted or needed in that workplace. And sometimes they leave half their self at that threshold and
Right.
don't bring their whole self. One interesting example that we tended to use was, tell me one thing about you that you don't think anybody in this room knows. And it's incredible what kind of things you hear, that you never dreamed that people had those kind of talents. Many of them are music and arts and various other things that perhaps don't have a direct, immediate link to the workplace, but yet can be so fulfilling when people are allowed to feel that. As one of the authors I listen to a lot is Matthew Kelly, and he always talks about being able to bring the best version of yourself. And I would say, let's bring the best version of every person into the workplace. Don't let it stop at the threshold, at the door.
That's such an important point. really very valuable. Um, I want to head as we wind down here to a little bit different direction for a moment, and that's just thinking a bit about the role of a board of directors in a company's culture. That their role seems to be could go beyond just fiduciary actions and management and hiring the CEO, but it has uh, a board can have a larger role in a company's culture direction, workplace
Right.
culture direction.
Well, there, to me, the simple answer is it's all in the questions that you ask, because they will tell the senior leadership what you care about. And forming and thinking about the right questions is so incredible. And let me give give an example of that. And you know, it's it's pretty prevalent in all the boards that I sit on. But one of the key features of any company is safety. And many companies talk about safety being their number one priority, or the top of our priority list, or one of the most important things we worry about and do. And a lot of it becomes rhetoric. But if board members start asking questions about safety and making it obvious to the leadership team that we consider safety as one of our primary values that we have for our company, that goes a long way. That's a strong message that you send to that leadership team, is that you care and want to know everything that's going on relative to the safety in the company, and every employee and the families of those employees, and the fact that every employee should have every right to stop work when it's unsafe, and to care about whatever the other employees are about, if they help each other in the safety, and have a culture where it's a norm, where you do that, take care of each other. Uh, that's the way we do work here. That's what we care about, is each other. And if we see something that's the wrong pair of gloves for the job, or the wrong pair of boots, or you don't have your safety goggles on, talk to each other. And you have the right to stop work at any time when it's unsafe. Those seem like little things, but when they come from a board of director member, that sends a message. And and it's not just safety, but I may probably talk too much about it, but I'm very passionate about that. And the point is, it is all in the questions that you ask, which creates the environment for that leadership team to know what your values are. And before I forget the whole thought about, that I use the word values, and they're so incredibly important. But I guess I would also make the point that know what your own values are first, whether you're a brand new engineer or brand new employee, or if you've been there 30 years, because you have to keep comparing those to the company's set of values. And if they're aligned, you're going to enjoy the heck out of that workplace and do your fullest. And if they're not aligned, you might as well leave, because it's not going to be the most enjoyable or productive way to use your life. So, my message would be, make sure you understand what your own values are, and then make sure you understand those of the company, and make sure that those two are understood and hopefully aligned.
Again, very valuable point. Be able to see your personal values in alignment with your employer's values builds that kind of loyalty and commitment and willingness to stick it out through good times and bad times. So, well, Lorin, it's clear you brought a lot of wisdom to this conversation, and much appreciated. And we look forward to when we get this posted online and available to people, that there will be much learning for the viewers of this. So we thank you very much today for your
You're very
time.
welcome, Jerry. Very, very welcome. All the best.
Thank you. To learn more, go to worldviewprograms.com.